an announcement.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Workplace Wellness Hour with Sumana Jetty and Ashley Fluellen and me, Felipe Cofino. Today, Ashley is out. She's spending some quality time with family, which is always important. We always promote that and support that. But Sumana and I are excited to talk about today's topic. Today's topic is going to be one I think that can resonate with a lot of people based on what's going on in the world. We're talking about, DEI and what does the future of work look like, and what does the future of DEI in the workplace look like? There's been a lot of conversation around this. There's been a lot of changes have been happening, and I think it's one of those things where there are some pros, there are some cons, and Suman and I want to discuss those and invite you all to come up here and share your thoughts. So we're going to be sharing the link to join us up on stage. But if you are listening right now in the chat, please go ahead and let us know where you're watching from. I see Adrian and Margaret there. Welcome. Great to see you. Let us know where you're watching from. Let us know if you're team live or team replay. And by all means, reshare the room to your network so that they know we're going on live, because if people want to go ahead and come in to this conversation and add their point of view or their perspective, we value that. This is a safe space where people can go ahead and share their thoughts. But before we tackle into the topic, let's catch up a little bit. Sumana, how have you been? What's been going on with you this past week?
Hello, Felipe. I always look forward to Monday nights to chat with you. I'm well, happy to be here. I mean, I do miss Ashley not being here, but it's so nice to, catch up and, talk about something that's kind of happening in real time in the world. For me, life is good. Ramadan just started, so we're in the middle of that. So I always look forward to this month of just like reflection and kindness and patience and, just wanting to like lean into some of the softer aspects of life that I think we sometimes forget in sort of the hustle and the hustle culture that we live in. So I'm just really grateful that I, get to spend time with all of you and folks who've joined us online. Thank you so much for listening to us, because this is something that we're committed to doing for you every other Monday night. And Felipe and I have been doing this, even today, Felipe, when I read your post about the eye thing, I was like, oh my God, I remember that from 3 years ago. I remember you sharing that in one of our live events from 3 years ago when we had first met and started discussing, workplace wellness, conversations. And now 3 years later, we're still showing up every other Monday night to talk about some things. And this might be a little bit of a kind of difficult topic in some ways, and I'm also not a DEI expert in any ways, but I'm definitely excited to learn. Felipe, how are things going with you? How's work? What's up on your end of the world?
Well, it's been a crazy week. Obviously, being in the nonprofit in the Washington D.C. area, we're feeling the pain and the heat from the government jobs being eliminated, the probationary jobs being eliminated. A lot of funding is being cut for a lot of nonprofits. So it's there's a lot of uncertainty, but we're navigating. And I am fortunate to be surrounded by a lot of people that that are a little. Some are very, very passionate. Some are just pissed off, and they're like, "We are going to find a way to make this work so that we can continue to help people the way we always have." And so they're determined. Let me say that. So I'm motivated by that, and I think that's always a great, channel that energy and find a way to make things better. We may have to change the way we did it, and that's part of the conversation today. But I think it's always a good, healthy attitude versus just being angry. It's okay to be angry, but don't stay there.
Yeah, I get it. But you know what? It's because it's Ramadan. We're not even supposed to get angry. We're supposed to like. So this is actually a really good test of how calm I can be. So this whole month I'm trying to be like, okay, don't get angry. Try to think of things that could potentially be causing this person to do this certain thing. So this is a good test of like.
Very zen. Find your zen zone. Well, and so question. Okay, let me pivot a second here.
Okay.
Ramadan, I understand a lot about Ramadan as far as what you all, what the importance of it is. But I have a question, a simple question.
Mm-hmm.
Is it appropriate to say Happy Ramadan, or how do you acknowledge it?
You can definitely say Happy Ramadan, but typically we say like Ramadan Mubarak. Like that's typically how you would say. Mubarak is just an Arabic word for, celebration. So you can say Ramadan Mubarak if you can remember that word. Happy Ramadan is like totally
appropriate. Okay, good. Well,
yeah.
Happy Ramadan or Ramadan Mubarak.
Yeah, you got it.
All right. Well, it's always good to be, and I think that's part of the value of workplace, wellness is understanding and learning from other cultures, which I think kind of dives into this topic. But before we dive into the topic, let's do some introductions because we always forget to do introductions. So go ahead and please introduce yourself for the people that have not had the pleasure of meeting you.
Oh my God, yes, thank you so much. So nice to have all of you here live with us. And Gregory, I just want to give you a shout out. You did say that you have invited a few different people to the live event. So I really appreciate that. Folks, please do invite others who might benefit from listening to us. My name is Sumana Jetty. I'm the founder and president of Jetty Wellness, and we provide in science-based solutions for businesses. And I have been in public health, so I really do understand that workplace wellness can be appreciated better if we really look at it from the lens of health and the quality of life and the prevention of diseases. I'm a big fan of what can we do, just like Felipe's post this morning, like, what can we do to prevent stress from causing a disease that you could potentially lose your eyesight or, have something else like hypertension or diabetes or any of those things that are a forever thing. Most of them are irreversible. So my perspective on workplace wellness is science-based, but it's also very much health-focused. And I'm really grateful that I get to teach businesses and professionals, every single day, different models and different research techniques of how to make well-being more sustainable. So that's what I do. And I would love to hear from Felipe as well, and a little introduction from him, because we always forget. And then we just move right into the show. Felipe, over to you.
We're very good about that. Well, real quick, for those of you who have not had a pleasure meeting, my name is Felipe Cofino. I'm a HR executive. I'm a career coach, and I'm a passionate LinkedIn enthusiast. I was recently named LinkedIn Top Voice by LinkedIn. So this year, don't know how long that will last, but I'm going to appreciate it as long as that lasts. And I'm also somebody who's very passionate about the workplace. So when I connected 3 years ago because we had similar passions, and it's something that stays important to me today. And the reference that Sumana made to the post I made today, I wrote an article. I haven't done an article in like 3 years, y'all. So I wrote an article, but it was because I wanted to do a post, and I realized there was too much of my story to tell there. And I shared that because stress impacts people in so many different ways. Stress is very diverse, to say the least. And it impacts us, and it might manifest in you having high blood pressure. It might manifest in migraines, in body aches. In my case, it manifested in my eye detaching from my retina detaching from my eyeball. If you want to learn more about how I almost lost my sight because of stress, you can check out the article. It's not that long, but it does give you some of the medical images of what my eye looked like a month ago and what it looked like a week ago, and how managing your stress is so important. But that's not what today's topic is about. So let's dive into the topic, and we are going to put the link in the bottom. But I do want to remind people, I forgot to do this. So if you are not following me on YouTube, do me a favor. We actually have a workplace wellness YouTube channel. In addition to the blog that you can find that Sumana does and the recap that they do, it's amazing. But we also have the replay here on LinkedIn. But sometimes you have to scroll back too far to really find the replays. So I just created a simple YouTube channel for all the different rooms that we do. And one of them is, of course, is workplace wellness. So I only have like a few subscribers. So I'm looking to increase subscribers. So if you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel, I invite you to subscribe and check out some of our past episodes. And of course, if you are in need of any coaching, HR services, or LinkedIn training, feel free to reach out to me through Confinio Consulting. That's always available. All right. With that being said, now that we've finished with introductions, let's move into the topic of today, DEI. Sumana, I'm going to start asking with you because
Mhm.
I know you say that you're not overly versed in it, but I think you're more versed in it than you think you are. And I think that between what you have studied and what you've experienced in life, and you have such an amazing perspective. So I'm going to pass over to you to start us off in the conversation of just some of the ideas about what's been happening. I have those questions that I posted that, let me share that real quick, actually, just in case it prompts any
Yeah,
ideas.
that's a good idea. Yeah.
But some of the questions that I posted in the original post basically talked about this. It said, how much value does DEI truly bring to the workplace? Which is a legitimate question right now, because I think some people have a negative association with the word DEI because they've misused it. The other one was, has DEI received a negative association because some employers approach it as a compliance task? The third question was, how have recent executive orders impacted DEI efforts in organizations? The other question I asked was, should DEI be reframed or rebranded to remain relevant and impactful? And of course, what does the future of DEI look like in the evolving landscape? So those are the questions I asked for you all. If you all have an opinion, a thought, for or against, doesn't matter. We're not here to judge. We want to have an honest conversation about this. So feel free to join us on stage. I'm going to put the link in the chat while Sumana's chatting here. But Sumana, your thoughts, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Honestly, I thought about this a lot, and all the questions are very important, but the two that really stood out to me were the ones on like, how do we rebrand, DEI efforts, and particularly for me, what's most interesting, because of the data-driven kind of mindset and the methods that we follow, I'm curious to also share, or was curious to learn more about how do we now create data-driven DEI, like dashboards and metrics, like what does that look like? So one thing I will share, and some of you who've been following the Workplace Wellness Collective for about 4 years now, I think it's around the same time when Jetty Wellness was established, we used to have the Workplace Wellness Collective, the mission was around DEIB. So our entire approach to the Workplace Wellness Collective at the time, almost 3 years ago now, was how do we create educational content, longitudinal educational content. So not something that's just like, I'm going to give you one session and you learn and forget about it, but longitudinal, meaning how can I continuously reinforce these messages to you, through these different modalities, audio, through LinkedIn audio, video, summits. We did all kinds of things. But over the last year, if you've sort of been following us, the Workplace Wellness Collective is now merged with Jetty Wellness. And I did that as a strategic business decision because they were two different businesses that were running, and now I decided to merge together. And this was before the election and all of this other stuff. My brain was already sort of spinning into like, how do I position the work that we're trying to do? If you want to call it rebranding, that's what it was. But how do I still continue to talk about the nuances of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging without making it too much in your face? So the collective, which is now what we call ourselves, doesn't have that, in your face DEI approach that the Workplace Wellness Collective at that time had. So that rebranding was intentional as a business approach because, and from the literature that I've read, if we start to look at DEI as a burden, as like, oh, I need to do this for my company, it tends to fail. But if you start to look at it as a business strategy, which is what a lot of Canadian organizations are doing, and which is where I'm from, so the effects of what's happening in the United States, like we are actually double downing on our DEI efforts. So for us, it's not just a checkbox. And I'm trying to think about this rebranding of DEI from workplace wellness. Like I'm going to say that's what my approach is. Like, how do I use strategies for employees to speak? And the big component of psychological safety that we've talked a lot about, how do I make leaders more accountable through structured mentorship programs? I think that to me is a very cool rebranding initiative for DEI. And how do I, and this is something that we've talked about a lot, is the flexibility and the hybrid work policies. And I think DEI intersects really beautifully with workplace wellness and that work-life balance and sustainability that we're talking about. So all of these things, are DEI, but we're not positioning them, very we're positioning them very strategically, so that it's not in your face DEI. I hope I'm making sense. Now, the other question about the data-driven approach, I absolutely love being able to see and measure things. If you can measure it, you can approve it. That is my my ideology when it comes to it. And I think a lot of criticism with DEI that I've seen from the literature that I've read and from the leaders I've spoken to in workplaces is that, well, how do I measure DEI? Like what do we have that is sustainable, that can tell me that this is working? In the burnout space, we look at presenteeism, we look at absenteeism, we look at employee engagement data. All of that is super cool, but in the DEI efforts, why not look at pay equity? Why don't I look at that? Why don't I look at psychological safety scores? Why don't I look at who's getting promoted in my company, and how does that impact the culture of the workplace? Belonging surveys, I think this is something that a lot of people don't do, and the organizations that do larger climate campus surveys, I've seen those, they start to notice that the data will speak very clearly to hey, the element that I'm lacking is that I don't find that I have sense of belonging in the workplace. And that in itself is, in my opinion, a good DEI metric, or a new DEI metric that we can look into. And I mean, maybe I'll just stop there for now, but it is just about measuring the right thing, but also positioning yourself in a way where you're not looking at DEI through that, traditional lens, but expanding it towards thinking about it from a cultural perspective as a strategic business solution. And businesses that are doing that and rebranding these efforts are creating these inclusive cultures and supporting talent recruitment in a way that I'm actually quite amazed to see that. So maybe maybe I'll stop there just to get the conversation going, and would love to hear, Felipe. I only picked 2 questions because those were the ones that really stood out to me, and it fits so beautifully with what we've done with the Workplace Wellness Collective, that I felt okay, it kind of makes sense. And I actually I couldn't tell you why I did what I did a year ago, but I was already thinking about rebranding the Workplace Wellness Collective to the collective almost a year ago. So anyways, over to you.
Well, thank you. Well, I'm ready to shake up the boat a little bit here, because I did put myself in other people's shoes, and I'm a big fan of doing that, because I try to understand why people are doing the things that they do. And sometimes I can figure it out, and sometimes I am lost. But before I do that, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who's joined us here, because it's so great to see so many friends here. It's great to see Meryl and Adrian. Meryl, you continue to be an amazing supporter of our room, so thank you. Margaret, great to see you. Hola. It's great to see Lisa Fevik, who's great. Lisa, my wife is going to start listening to your room, by the way, whenever you have a room. I talked to her about you so much that she's like, who's that person you always tell me I should listen to about women's health? And I'm like, Lisa. So you're going to have another follower soon. And Gregory, thank you for inviting people. We really appreciate you doing that. You're another great supporter of the room. And I know you have some thoughts about this topic, so I hope you join us. And Anupama, thank you for joining us. Happy Monday to you. And Sia is in the house. Always great to see you, Sia, here. Love for you to come up as well. And who else do we have? Jay, thank you for coming up here. And Christy, great to see you as always. Always appreciate your support, my friend. And then Harish, thank you for coming. Stephen Eng, always great to see you here. And Lisa Marie. Lisa Marie has a room at 9 o'clock tonight, you all. It's basically right after the show, where she's honoring a LinkedIn friend, connection, colleague, acquaintance, whatever he may have been to you, recently passed away. His name was Harold, and I'm not going to try to butcher his last name. It was I want to say Grabowski, but I'm not sure if that's right. And it was sad to see him pass away, but Lisa's honoring his memory with a live right after the show. So I just wanted to mention that. And so with that being said, let me jump into this here. So here are my thoughts about this topic and some of the questions. First of all, from an HR perspective, one of the things that got eliminated was affirmative action. Now, I know that I'll be honest, I did not realize this until probably 5-10 years ago, but affirmative action in the schools, in colleges and universities, is actually kind of a quota system. And I didn't realize that because affirmative action in the workplace wasn't a quota system. And that's why I used to think of it so positively. But I saw the negative side of it when it's like a quota system. But affirmative action in the workplace, what it really did was, as an HR professional, I was required to make sure that I had my jobs made aware to everyone so that anyone could apply. And ideally, my applicant pool should reflect that it was open to people regardless of where they lived, what they looked like, what they spoke. And so that was the obligation that we had, was making sure that we did that. At the end of the day, we still had to hire the most qualified candidates. And we had to prove that they were the most qualified candidates. That was affirmative action. That went away. And that was something that, honestly, there was some extra work that we had to go through for all of it. But my practice of making sure that my jobs are available to everyone out there hasn't changed. My practice of how I'm going to look at candidates and make sure I look at them fairly and evenly and try to do some blind recruiting by not looking at where they live or their name, that's still going to continue. So I think that because certain things go away doesn't mean that people are going to start practicing it. Now, with DEI, here's the thing about DEI. There's no question it brought value. It opened up so many doors for so many people. It opened up people's eyes to some inequities in the workplace. It helped people refocus to make sure that they were being more inclusive. The problem is that some people use those metrics in the wrong ways, and they didn't do it as a method to improve the workplace and make it more inclusive and more diverse and more equitable. They did it to check off a box, and they usually did something shady around it. And so because people started doing that, it started getting some negative association with it, let's say. I always had an issue when people would mention, oh, DEI, it's all negative. I'm like, what's negative about DEI? It's about being diverse and inclusive. It's not just diversity in how you look, it's diversity in thoughts and ideas and perspectives. But I realized that I probably had to make that argument 1 out of every 3 times DEI came up. So looking at this whole concept of removing DEI, I think is atrocious. We need to value those things. But is there value in maybe finding other ways to communicate those values? And that's where I am today. I think there is a way to communicate these values in a different way. Looking at the words like belonging and fairness and culture, these words have meaning behind them, and they do include a lot of what DEI stood for. So I think there's still ways of communicating and practicing it, but just like everything else in the world, I don't know how many of you have had a sports team that had to change their name because the name wasn't appropriate, the meaning had changed, it was wrong, or maybe you stopped using a certain word that you grew up saying all the time. And I'm not saying like the worst word, I'm talking just like a common word that you're like, oh, you don't say that anymore, Or some people, the word moist. Okay, I said it. Sorry if that bothers some of you out there, but that word just it icks people sometimes. Okay, so here's the thing: the words diversity, equity, inclusion somehow have gotten muddled and muddied. So just like we change with other things, we can change the meanings, the words, but the meaning behind them still stay the same. And that's my take on it right now, because I think that there's so much more value into making sure that the mission that we're trying to achieve is still there, and not get caught up on the word, because let those other people get caught up in the words. For me, it's about the work Are we doing the right work? Are we making change? And are we making an impact? If we are, let's do that. But just like before, there's people who are going to push back. And I want to make sure that we are in a world where we are able to have a discussion, listen to both sides, and either respectfully disagree or come to a common agreement to the best solution forward. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm going to stop there because we have somebody who's joined us on stage, and I encourage all of you all to join us on stage as well. I'll put the link in the chat again here, but please, by all means, go ahead and join us. You don't need to turn your cameras on. This is audio only today. But Sumana, as I start bringing people on stage, tell me your thoughts about what I said. Any ideas or thoughts or any disagreements?
No, I mean, I do appreciate, where you're coming from, and because of your, very strong HR background and your commitment to workplace wellness, I see why that rebranding and I'm the type of person, like, I'm such a scientist where I feel like if something is not working, it's okay to change it. So I'm quick to be the one to say, like, well, we tried this experiment, it didn't work, let's change something. And I do agree with you. The word has become just like burnout. I've talked about this a lot, and lately I'm noticing, even talking to clients, that the word burnout has almost become like that icky word, like DEI, where no one wants to hear it because we know that it's a problem. We know that it exists. So people don't want to talk about burnout. They want to talk about wellness. They want to talk about culture. They want to talk about belonging. They want to talk about workload. They want to talk about leadership strategies. And these are all kind of areas that are, in the larger scheme of things, under the umbrella of what could potentially happen if you burn out, but we don't want to bring that word in. And so it has diluted, it's been overused so much that there's no point even using the hashtag burnout, in today's world. The only thing I want to add, though, I think, is when we talk about like culture, and again, I'm not a DEI expert, but I think when we talk about workplace culture and like using this sort of like a business strategy, I know even for workplace wellness, and it's changing now. What used to happen is, workplace wellness used to sit with HR, and now I'm seeing that workplace wellness is getting pulled out of HR and it's its own entity. I'm seeing directors of people and culture. I'm seeing well-being directors and VPs of employee well-being initiatives. So those positions that didn't exist 4 years ago now exist, and these departments now exist. So if we start to think about DEI as, like you said, Felipe, like, it's not a checkbox approach, it's not compliance driven, but it's more strategy driven, then removing, not that we want to completely eliminate, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, not that we want to completely eliminate HR from it, but I definitely want to see DEI as its own thing, driven by the people, driven by the leaders, for example, right? Like, what are we measuring? I've already talked about that, but who's driving this new brand? And it doesn't have to necessarily be HR, because when people think DEI is initiated by HR, they think compliance. They don't think, this is a culture thing. However, I know you do a lot of culture work, so I know maybe that shift is changing. So,
and with the culture, here's the thing. I grew up in a workplace and I was in the hotel industry, where they always said, hey, security is everyone's job. We look out for the safety of our employees and our guests the same. Well, as HR, I've always said culture is everyone's job. So I think wellness falls in that same bucket of wellness is everyone's job. Is HR going to continue to try to enhance it, try to maybe share, some opportunities to participate in events? Absolutely. But I think every leader needs to make it a priority in their area. So I totally agree with that. And I will say that I think with all of the discussions happening out there, I think there's, words lose meanings when they're overused. I've heard people say the word authenticity has been overused so much that it's lost its authenticity. Okay, so it's one of those things where we have to realize that sometimes when words have lost their meaning and are not being used, as effectively, there is a chance to start rebranding or choose a different word that means the same, but it doesn't have the negative association. But Gregory, I know you're passionate about this topic, so please share your thoughts on Mike, and your 2 minutes are yours. Over to you, my friend.
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yes, this is a very deep, passionate topic. I think this topic found me rather. I found the topic. I am a person of color and a neurodivergent person on the spectrum and ADHD. And I will say, without DEI, and I have included A and B with my network friend by the name of Lynn, who's on this call. I would not have the success of all the successes and the open doors that has gotten to me in regards to a 40% efficiency rate. I will say that I totally agree with my Canadian sister networking partner that Canada has doubled down on DEI, but the thing is, Canada HR is virtually working at a snail's pace in terms of enacting DEI AB related policies. That's why I will say I'm going to take a spin off from you have the Felipe 5. I'm going to call this the Fitzroy 4, which is my middle name. That I'm going to take it through the recruiting and selection efforts in regards to fixes in regards to making it more DEI appropriate. One is resume, because a neurodivergent resume is virtually very different than any other resume that people will come across. My second point is basically ATS systems. I will say that ATS systems are only built to an efficiency rate of 95%. We need to get that to 99.99999% forever to encompass people who are neurodivergent and other disability stripes. My third one is interviewing ethics. I will say it's basically straightforward. And my fourth point is what we need to be doing on this call today is to talk about the intersectionality of DEI-AB in regards to recruiting, mainly towards in terms of supporting the neurodiverse, non-traditional talent of personnel who presents, and I totally agree with you, Felipe, and my Canadian sister networking compadre, that we present a different shade of discussions, thoughts, and ideas that we should be at the table. According to an HR magazine, only 23% of HR professionals are exposed to neurodiversity in the last 12 months, and that was a magazine article that's like 2 or 3 years old. That's why I will say that to fix this, I should say that they should be more HR professionals should be reaching out to neurodiverse applicants to get more exposure to their thoughts and their ideas, to make themselves more comfortable when they are interviewing that type of person. Similar to, I will say, I will coin a phrase, since there's 2 NFL football fans here, that the NFL has a Rooney Rule that you have to interview one minority candidate for a head coaching or a general manager type of role. And I think that I will say the whole entire HR space needs to think about having a situation that they should have, that HR professionals should be exposed to I will say 10, maybe 15 neurodiverse or overall people with disability candidates to get to know them, and basically get a feel in terms of what they could bring in terms of a interviewing type of situation. Because one of the major barriers in regards to people who are neurodiverse is years of experience, and I see this on a lot of job descriptions that they're calling for X amount of years of experience, and it's basically an entry level type of position in terms of job descriptions, and that needs to be do away.
Well, and Gregory,
Be
let me
more
say this about that.
base and stuff. So yeah,
I know with the job descriptions, like I told you before, I think if there's a company that is saying it's entry level and they're requiring 2 to 3 years experience, that tells me right there a lot about that company, that I probably don't want to work for that company, because they are misrepresenting things already from the get-go. That's a red flag for me right there. But you brought up some great points, and I wanted to go back and I didn't want to forget about it, because you started off talking about DEIB and your 4 points, and here's the thing that I want people to realize is that my optimistic point of view is that DEI is not going away; it's evolving. Some people would like to see it go away, and that's always going to exist. There's just those kind of people out there that are going to think that way, and that's, again, diverse thinking. Let them think that way, because it helps us challenge our thought to make sure that what we're doing is right. But it's evolving, so I'd rather spend my time being part of that evolvement than fighting the people that don't like the words DEI or the phrase, the abbreviation DEI or diversity, equity, inclusion. I'd rather find words that mean the same and keep the meaning and work alive. And that, I think, is the important thing. Now, to your point about the resume, ATS, the and talking about it, and the ethics, interview ethics, I think education is always something that every HR person has to continue doing. Education is always a huge part of their career development, and that includes understanding neurodivergent workforce and understanding what is available in the workplace. Now, I'm going to say something here that might be a little bit controversial. I don't know. Sumana, tell me what your thoughts are about this. But MHCHR me. But if I am in a place and there is a very low Latino representation, say I'm the only Latino in the company, am I going to hire somebody just because they're Latino? Hell no. I'm going to hire a qualified person. If they happen to, and now, am I going to make sure that the Latino community knows about the openings? Absolutely. Am I going to encourage them to apply? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to give somebody, just because they're the same culture as me, any advantage over anybody else, because that would be discriminatory. That would be, paying favoritism. And I think that's what we have to be careful about, is to make sure that when we are doing this and we say about equity and inclusion, it's that we're doing the right thing. That means posting the right jobs with the realistic expectations. Hey, it's entry level, no experience needed, willing to train. That's what it should read. So I totally agree with you on that, Gregory. But as far as HR people becoming more educated on neurodiversity, I think that's an absolute must. I think that there's definitely things that there could be some exceptions made for certain things if there are some testing that's required for certain jobs. But I also know that a lot of neurodiverse individuals that are constantly upskilling themselves. They're picking a skill and they're becoming experts in that area, and they're promoting themselves in that way, and that's been helping them stand out in that area too. But again, I think that what you're saying, and keep on talking and advocating for it, because people like you are helping HR individuals think differently. You're challenging them to provide better opportunities, and you're challenging them to continue to learn.
I have a question for you, Felipe.
Sure.
Would you like to see a situation that is basically you would have to go through neurodiverse training every 2 years to keep your certification?
I think that's extremely easy, and absolutely, I would say every year.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. And again, I encourage all of you all down in the audience to join us on stage here and continue this conversation, because we want to have a very open and safe conversation about this, because there are different points of views on this, and we're not going to judge anybody for having a different point of view. But I do want to challenge certain things, and I welcome to have a healthy, respectful discussion. Sumana, thoughts on your end?
Yeah, thank you so much, Gregory. It was nice to listen to you as well, and I think you've shared a lot from the HR lens and recruitment, which again, I'm not an expert in that space, so I won't talk too much about it. But the one thing that when the both of you were talking, it got me thinking, it's the same challenge that I have or I encounter when I am teaching, complex research. The goal always is, how do I simplify the language for the buy-in? Like, I want people to understand this model, which is highly scientific, but I want it to be applicable to their real world. So I think what tends to happen in this sort of like rebranding of DEI, and the words are getting, like, the terminology is starting to lose its kind of impact. So one of the things that has worked in the wellness space is like just literally changing the language, like making the words so simple and practical and beneficial for the business and for the people that they get it. So instead of saying like, hey, we want diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, accessibility, like these are all great words and they mean different things for different people. For Gregory, I know the accessibility and belonging piece could mean something totally different to you, and it would mean something totally different to me, and diversity could mean something totally different to me, because I'm a person of color as well, as with you and as with Felipe as well. So one of the, going back to that question of like, how do we simplify this, these words, I think a very simple strategy, because we say words matter. We know that words matter. Why don't we think about, and this is something that folks, maybe you can comment, is what other words can we use to replace and rebrand DEI to get that buy-in, now that we know that the world is evolving and we want to keep this as sort of this, we want to integrate this in our culture, but maybe we don't want to hear the word diversity, equity, inclusion. We don't want to hear those words. Maybe we want to hear something totally different. Like maybe we want to hear, I don't know off the top of my head, like whatever that word is. I can put it in the comment in a minute here. But those were just my thoughts, Felipe, like in this space where things are changing constantly. And we know that we need to get leadership buy-in. We know that we need to get employee buy-in, HR buy-in. If we can just get rid of all the jargon, all the science and all that other stuff, and really just simplify the message that we're not alienating, the Latinos, the South Asians like myself. Like, we don't want to alienate anybody, but we just want to, appreciate that everybody is different, and that we respect them as they are. So I'll just stop there.
Well, thank you, Sumana. And again, I think that at the end of the day, there's so much that we can still cover that we're not going to cover in this hour, but there's definitely, I think, strong opinions. Oh, wait, we just lost Melissa Houston. Where'd she go? And so, and at the end of the day, we have to remember that there's value that came from the programs that were created from DEI. And just because things are changing doesn't mean that the work needs to go away. We just have to find ways of making it be effective. And I think that when you talk about whether it's race, gender, neurodivergency, background, there's so much to learn, and we have so much that we can gain from that. But Melissa M. Houston's on stage, and I'd love to hear what her thoughts are about this topic. So, Houston, over to you.
Hi, Melissa.
Oh, we lost her. She might be having a mic problem.
Can I just say,
while we wait, let me just welcome some people that join us on stage. It's great to see Phil Davis, another HR friend. Great to see you as always. And Aaron Gibson from Calgary. Great to see you there as well. And, I love seeing everyone have a conversation and with each other and the community that we have here. And I think that the LinkedIn community has been a great example of how to really learn from each other. And we've done such a great job of that. And that's why the workplace is so important. I know that for me, the value of the DEI programs and the DEI initiatives that I experienced definitely improved the workplace. But like I said before, everything evolves. So what's the next stage of continuing to improve the workplace? How can we continue to make it better? And if there's people that are against it, well, there's always going to be people that don't agree. But it's up to us to find ways to keep the true work going. Gregory, did you have any other final thoughts you wanted to share before we start wrapping up?
I will. This is my final thoughts. Is this? If
All right. Well, he might
DEI,
be stepped away for a minute. Sumana.
oh, sorry.
So
Is DEI?
as far as this topic, we are doing a series, of the future of work here, everyone, and this is part 2 of the series, and part 3 of the series. I know we talked about remote work, hybrid work, return to the office, and all that fun stuff. I don't know if that's still something that we want to continue, but if you're listening, please let us know in the chat some thoughts. Sumana, go ahead and talk.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I'm not able to hear you. Are you able to hear me?
I could hear both of you.
Okay,
Oh,
I think.
Okay, Melissa's back.
I think I can hear everybody. Felipe can't hear me.
Hey guys, Sumana, I can hear you.
Okay, so you can hear me, Gregory can hear me, but Felipe can't hear me.
I can hear you though.
You guys have your wires crossed. And I'm so sorry because I kept trying to join and it kept kicking me out of myself. So I jumped on my laptop quick. But hi, chaos over here, huh? So let me just say, I love this topic. This conversation needs to keep happening. And so I just applaud you guys for doing it. I'm torn on how we move forward because doing background screens, I feel like talking about DEI initiatives, if we don't focus on the forward process, getting people who don't look like me to work, giving them fair chances, whether it be education, on the job training, or formal education. I'm excluded from a lot of jobs because I don't have a certificate from a university, but I do have knowledge others do not have, and I've garnered that on the job. And so I think there's a lot to be spoken about, but I also know that with background screening, we have disparate impact. We have a lot of research we still need to put out there because of the implicit biases we see, right? We don't even mean to do it, but they're there. And I've seen it inside my own family. I have a mixed race child, and my son is older than the others. And so he doesn't necessarily look like he belongs even in the age group. And if we would sit at a restaurant before others, he would be treated different. There was an experience there. And so just worried about the future. I have family of all diversities and backgrounds, age groups. I am facing disabilities of my own. I won't be able to walk at some point in my life. And I think it's important to keep having these conversations because while it doesn't affect me in all things today, it does affect the long-term ripple of everything I've ever touched, loved, or cared about. And so I'm glad to be here. But the question I really would pose then, Felipe, is if this isn't a focus on the paper, right? There's not a group in some organizations anymore focusing on this as a primary initiative. How do you naturally create diverse environments where we can have conversations like this when we're not in a chat room or in a live event? How do you do that in a workplace without sounding like you're trying? Like, how do you do that? What would you say?
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up because one of the things that I had at my last job for 7 years, we were a smaller organization and we didn't have a DEI committee or DEI group. We had a culture committee. My CEO liked to call it Culture Club because he was a fan of Boy George, but I had to correct him multiple times. It's Culture Committee, but we tackled all these issues in that committee. We tackled issues about diversity, about belonging, about equity. We tackled community issues. We tackled financial issues. We tackled wellness issues. So it truly was a committee that looked at everything about the culture, the impact of the culture. And when you think about what impacts the culture, it's a long list, y'all. Make a list of things that you think impact your work culture, and you'll be shocked at how long that list is. So I think that's, for me, it's about getting creative. People always say, oh, there's a problem. Great. Don't come to me with just a problem. Come with me some ideas and solutions that you might have, and maybe we can build on that. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to hear, and sorry if I sound harsh and cold here, I don't want to hear people whining and complaining. I want to hear about what are we going to do? How are we going to fix this? How are we going to make it better? And let's take some action. Because at the end of the day, I don't want to sit back and just whine and complain and let it happen.
Oh, I love that. I'm a big fan of action, but I have to say this, and something Gregory brought up was experience, but I personally only changed my life because I could answer yes to the following question. And that was, do you have reliable transportation? And I think that is such an exclusive question because reliable transportation can be determined by the person screening. What's reliable transportation to me, which may be my feet, the bus system, a bike, does not qualify in some rooms, right? And so I think we need to be careful about how far away from being focused on inclusion we are. But at the same time, if I want an employee, right, Felipe, I do want that qualification. Like, I want you to show up. No joke, guys. So I get the idea of the question. But if you have shown up at every other job for the last couple of jobs and you didn't have that issue, why am I going to be concerned today? Because I asked a specific question that may not have been relevant at all if you show that you're a good person to show up and you have good attendance. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here, but
you
I've
bring up a
lived
great
it.
question though, because that it's actually illegal to ask somebody if they have a car to get to work, or how far how are they going to get to work. But asking do they have reliable transportation is not illegal. It's a way around that. What HR and what I've trained my staff over the years and my recruiters over the years to ask is simply this: the start time for this shift, for this job, is 8 a.m. Are you able to arrive to work on time? Yes or no? Yes, great. I don't care if you ride a donkey to work. As long as you get there on time, it's your form of transportation. I don't need to know what it is, because people are going to judge you if you take public transportation. People are going to judge you if you say that you have to ride a bike. So at the end of the day, that shouldn't be a question. It should be, can you ride to work on time? Yes or no? Great. Thank you. So that's a great point you bring up, because it does open up the opportunity for people to be non-inclusive. So great point, Melissa. Sumana, did you want to add to that?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yay!
See, I knew this had to happen, whether it's the old LinkedIn or the new LinkedIn. Sometimes we just have to pop out and come back in. No, I'm loving just like listening to you. Melissa, thank you so much. I put in the comment, I said, we got to leverage employee resource groups. I mean, if there is no like formal DEI committees, and I think a lot of places don't have them, and that's okay, but there's so many ways to kind of like integrate or infuse small moments of I say small moments of wellness, but it could be small moments of culture. I call them wellness shots, but we can call them something else. But it's okay to have informal spaces and conversations about these difficult things. It doesn't have to be this big, let me bring my ED and my vice chancellor and all these like leadership people and intimidate everybody or make them come to a town hall because it's mandatory to talk about it. Like, don't make these conversations mandatory. I always say wellness, cannot be delegated. It needs to be, appreciated. It needs to be, the ownership of wellness needs to come from the individual. So we can't delegate DEI. That's not something we want to do, but we want to encourage it. How do I encourage you to take these small micro actions towards informal, I say, get I think, Felipe, you've talked about this. Put on a TED Talk before your meeting, a 2-minute video, and talk about it. Do like a roundtable discussion. There's so many unique, creative ways to, just like in the beginning of this conversation, Felipe asked me, like, how do I wish somebody Ramadan? And I said, hey, you say Ramadan Mubarak, or you can say Happy Ramadan. It's a very small thing. It's not like I came here and gave like this big lecture of what this means, but just asking like, hey, what is and how do I, or let's talk about this, which is what we do here in this LinkedIn audio. Something similar to this at a roundtable in your office could be established in about 5-10 minutes. And again, going back to what I said earlier before we wrap this up is, the idea behind knowledge is how do I make sure that it's being reinforced. These conversations are not a one-time, we had a town hall once a year and we're never going to talk about DEI ever again. Like, how do I continue to reinforce continuous knowledge through that longitudinal approach? Like, these conversations need to happen more than once, and it doesn't have to be a big deal. Like, let's stop making these things seem larger than they are. It can be small intentional efforts. Thank you.
That's so well said, and I'm glad you brought up the ERG groups, because that's another thing that, unfortunately, in the federal government, they did away with DEI and ERG groups here in the U.S. But ironically enough, again, in that place where I was before, we didn't have the DEI committee, we had a culture committee. We tried to do ERG groups. Now, ERG groups were traditionally around culture and race groups that wanted to come together. Well, we didn't have enough people that could come together that wanted to form a group for that. What came out of it was we had employee interest groups. We never called them EIGs, but we called them employee interest groups, where people had, there were cooking groups that want to learn how to cook Asian food or Latino food. We had book groups that read books together. We had fishing groups that went fishing together. So we had groups that came together because they had common interests, and it brought people together from different backgrounds, different nationalities, different cultures, and they were able to learn from each other. So again, to me, there's an opportunity to keep evolving this into something that is enhanced and can be built off of what has already been done, and hopefully make it better. And again, those people that are trying to fight it, they'll always be there. There's always going to be a naysayer. So I'm not worried about them. I'm more worried about what we can do. So I've absolutely loved this conversation, you all. This has been amazing. Thank you for everyone that has joined us here and all the chats. As a reminder, if you're listening to us, please put something in the chat so that we know you were here. Let us know if you're team live or team replay, and let us know what topics you think we should cover. Sumana, should we cover the return to work or
I think we should do micro retirement. Can we please talk about micro retirement, which I had posted about earlier this week, and I'm getting some comments on my post. It's just this idea that a lot of Gen Zs and millennials are, working 1 or 2 years or maybe 3 years and taking like a sabbatical for like a year and not waiting until they're 65 to retire. So sort of abolishing the traditional retirement ideologies and bringing in something totally new. I would love to talk about that, Felipe.
Well, okay, and I'm curious about your thoughts about my idea of my micro retirement idea.
I loved yours too. I did love yours too. So that would be a good discussion. Yes.
Well, hey, in the chat, you all, let us know micro retirements, which it sounds like that might be the one, or would you actually like to hear about return to work? Oh, we have somebody that jumped on stage real quick, Chris Monacer. So let's bring him up real quick. And then Melissa, I'm going to give you a chance to have final thoughts. But Chris, thank you for joining us. Any thoughts on this topic? All right, Sumana, are you able to hear Chris? I can't hear him.
No, I'm sorry. Your audio is not working.
Yeah, Chris, we're not able to hear you. You might want to try leaving and coming back in and seeing if that works. While we wait for Chris to get his mic working, Melissa, any last thoughts on the topic you wanted to share?
I just love that you guys aren't following them or subscribe to this. Please go do that. I know you were going to get there eventually, but maybe I can do it for you, because really, guys, I show up to learn from these guys. They are spitting tons of knowledge, and we don't all have to agree on everything, but having diverse opinions on one stage is what it's about. So thank you for hosting.
Well, thank you for your support. You're an amazing person. If you're not following Melissa Houston, definitely check her out. Document and Act is her website, and she does some great work. And she is another co-host with me on the Careers, Chaos, and Coaching. So I have two of my favorite people on stage with me. I'm so lucky right now.
Aw, no, Melissa's great. I haven't heard her voice in so long, and I just heard her voice, and I'm like, oh, I miss Melissa's voice. No,
Well,
thank you
I
so much,
missed you guys too.
Melissa.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go down. Felipe, kick me out of here, but I love you both.
All right, I'll
Thanks.
take you out. All right, thank you,
Cheers.
Houston. All right, well, listen, Sumana, final thoughts and anything you have coming up you want to share with everyone?
Honestly, the only thing I'd love to share is please let us know what you would like to have us talk about next week, whether it's that hybrid work, flexible work kind of debate that I'm very interested in, but also this new sort of trend on micro-retirement. If that's something that's exciting and you kind of want to talk about that, please just let me know. Appreciated all of the comments and feedback. So the Workplace Wellness Hour blogs for this for the month. So we typically compile, if it's 2 or 3 shows a month that we do, we'll compile all that information, and my intern Hannah puts that together. So that just went out today. We try to do it end of the month. So the first Wednesday or the first Monday of the month, you will get the blog recap of the previous month. So we've got everything going for you for January as well as for February. So if you missed the live, or if you don't feel like watching the replay again, you can just definitely read all the content, Felipe's 5, Ashley's brilliant strategies, some of the science components that I've shared, they're all in there. Not too hard to read. We've simplified a lot of the knowledge, and then you can just link back to the different ideas, back to Felipe's 5, etc. So that's available. I'm also posting my other regular Jetty Wellness blog that's coming out on Wednesday, and this month, actually, I'm not going to tell you what it's about because I'd love for you to read about it on Wednesday. But I'm really excited that we get to talk about this topic next week. So on Wednesday, if you follow my post, I'll be sharing the link to that blog. But beyond that, nothing really. I'm just really happy that I got a chance to talk about this. I missed not having Ashley here, but this is a series that we're doing as part of Future of Work. So there's going to be more of these conversations coming up. And again, thank you for your participation in the chat as well as coming up on stage as well. Thank you, Felipe. Over to you.
Well, thank you, Sumana, and thank you, everyone. As far as for me coming up, well, just a reminder, everyone, if you're not following me on my YouTube channel, give me a follow, and you can also check out some of the past episodes that we've done here at the Workplace Wellness Hour, as well as some of the other shows I do. I do also have a playlist of Felipe's 5, so you can check those out there. As far as coming up, I do have my Social Saturday chat that is happening every Saturday at 12 noon Eastern, where it's a great way to network and meet phenomenal people here on LinkedIn. And then on Sunday, Melissa, Houston, and I have Careers, Chaos, and Coaching, so keep an eye out. That event will be posted very soon. So let me add up here. If you're not following Cofino Consulting, give me a follow there as well. I've been getting some more work there. I actually got 2 speaking events recently, one in May, and my first one that I'll be traveling to St. Louis in September for. So if you're ever looking for consulting with HR services or speaking engagements or career coaching, reach out to me there. And with that being said, I am excited to be here in 2 weeks, and hopefully Ashley will be back and we can tackle either micro retirements or return to the office. So, Sumana, thank you again for another wonderful hour. I appreciate you so much.
Same. Thank you so much. This has been great. Learned a lot as per usual. And I hope this was helpful for all the participants who joined us on LinkedIn Audio. And please do watch the replay if you want to kind of listen to some of the ideas again. But if you don't want to watch it again, like I said, the blog is up. I'm looking forward to seeing you, Felipe, in 2 weeks, 2 Mondays. And hopefully we'll pick one of those 2 topics.
Well, and hopefully those of you in the audience are going to vote and let us know what you want to hear, because we like to do things that you find relevant. And I just want to thank everyone again that joined us, everyone from Meryl to Jay to Sunil to Melissa to Phil, Adrian, Gregory, and Annie joined us. Great to see you, Annie, and Nicole, Nick. Thank you for joining us there as well. So thank you everyone for being here. We really appreciate you, and we'll be back in 2 weeks for another Workplace Wellness Hour, same time, same channel. And with that being said, we're going to send you off with a little outro video, and hope you have a great rest of your week. And remember to keep wellness a priority in your life. Stress is a silent killer, and if you want to know about how I almost lost my eyesight, check out the article I just wrote today. Have a great day, everyone. Adios.
Everyone, I have an announcement.